webinars. Next week, we have a webinar by Deloitte on the topic governance, risk, and compliance. We will soon be sharing all the details on our social media handles. You can follow us on Twitter @SciSecCoE to know about all our upcoming webinars and different activities.
Shika, we have lost your screen. We're not able to see it.
Okay, just a minute. Is it back? Is it back, Karthik? Is it visible now?
It is about, yes, now it's visible. Not the presentation. We are seeing the WebEx screen.
Okay, is the presentation not visible?
No.
It's visible, Samgacchadhwam.
That's visible now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's visible, right? The series and the table?
Right.
Yes, it's visible, Shika.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, carry on.
So this is the list of the upcoming webinars that we have, the one in orange. And next week, we have a webinar by Deloitte on the topic governance, risk, and compliance. So you can follow us on our Twitter @SciSecCoE to know about all of our activities and upcoming webinars. We'll keep you updated. You can also access the previous videos of Samgacchadhwam series on SciSec's YouTube channel. You can revisit them anytime later. As usual, we have an assessment after the webinar, which will be kept open for 60 minutes. The questions are usually from topics which are already covered in this webinar. For this, those who get 5 or more than 5 marks out of 10 will be provided with a certificate of achievement. Those who are unable to take the assessment will be provided with a certificate of participation. At the end of the assessment, you will also be asked to provide your feedback. Please provide your genuine feedback and be assured that it will not have any bearing on your assessment. Also, we request you to provide your details very clearly while taking the assessment, as the certificate is generated basis these details. We will be sharing the assessment link in the Q&A chat session. Please note that this assessment will be open only to those who have participated in this webinar. Let me now take this opportunity to introduce today's speaker for the webinar. We have with us Mr. Bala Senthil. He is the Regional Sales Head, South India and Sri Lanka at SECLORE. Mr. Bala has more than 14 years experience in the field of soft solution sales, consultative selling, and software product sales. He has handled both international and domestic markets and has worked on products like BPM, ECM, data security, BI, ERP, and mobility. He also has a wide exposure to banking, insurance, captive shared service, BPOs, retail sector, among others. We welcome you, sir. We are sure that today's session will be very enriching. Now over to you, Bala, for the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Shika. Thank you for Karthik, for the brief introduction. Hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, Bala, you're audible.
Great. Let me project my screen. Are you all able to view my screen?
No,
Not yet, Bala.
not yet. Yes, Bala, it's visible now.
Is it visible now?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. You can now open the presentation is also visible.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Good to go ahead?
Yes, please. Please.
Yeah. So I understand, like, today, we have participants, from, engineering students. Okay. Then we have got some faculties and some working professionals. Okay, who are part of this. Okay. So I take, this opportunity to thank all of you. Okay. To be a part of this session and understand about, what is data-centric security, and with a focus on, digital rights management. Right. So as Shika mentioned, like, whenever there are some queries, like, you can leave it on the chatter, and we will try to take it towards the end of the session. Let me begin with, okay, some context to, data centric security. So we need to understand, like, what is data centric security for all of us, right? Okay. So we all would have understood about, what is data security. There are n number of tools which are available in the market, okay, where, the data is secured, before it's getting shared. So now we need to understand, like, what is typically any data centric security shall do. So when we talk about, sensitive information, what is sensitive information, right? Okay. So for example, sensitive information for an individual and a sensitive information for a corporate could be completely different. What is sensitive information for all of us who are sitting here? For example, like, it could be your, PAN number, or it could be your Aadhaar card number, or it could be for, your driving license number, or go to, any bank and open an account, and then, like, your banking, statement details. So from a personal information point of view, these are some of the sensitive information, for an individual. So now talking about business, okay. So from a business point of view, any, critical assets an organization is dealing with, right? Okay. So all that could be, considered as, okay, as sensitive information. So it could be a board meeting notes for organization, or it could be a customer data whom they are dealing with, or, or they are dealing with some, legal consultants where, there are some contracts which are getting exchanged. So all that could become a critical information for a business. Now there are also, like, institutions which are in public sector or government, where they need to handle some critical information. So that goes without saying that, say for example, it could be, a defense organization of the country, like, it could be an Indian Navy, or it could be an Indian Army or Indian Air Force. They are probably, like, handling a lot of, critical classified information, okay, that needs to be protected. So it is very important for us to understand, what are these sensitive information, and before we talk about, the technology itself, right? So moving further, so what is data protection? So data protection, refers to, the various practices, okay, or the binding rules that are put in place to, protect the sensitive data, right? So for example, the data can, flow, either, within an organization or external to an organization. The data needs to be, persistently protected, and it is also, data protection also means that, we need to, safeguard the availability and integrity and confidentiality of the data, and by making it available only to the concerned authorized people. Okay, and it cannot be, shared with, any unauthorized person, who should not be having actually an access to your sensitive information, right? So what is important, what is required is, how do you ensure and how do you control whenever the information is shared, who can access it, how long this information that he can access it, and for what reason he can access it. So this is what is we talk about, like data protection in a nutshell. And going forward, like we'll just, in the context of data leakage, in context of unauthorized internal sharing. Say for example, let me give an example. Like say for example, what do you mean by unauthorized internal sharing? Okay, so there are, say 1,000 employees in an organization. Okay, and data is freely exchanged between the employees, and there are some who have got privileged access. But what happens is, a lot of times there is an data which gets shared unintentionally, right? And we do not know about the security of that particular data. Then coming to insider threat would be, say for example, there are very critical information, and somebody who has got a malicious intent in an organization, right? Okay, so he wants to leak your confidential data of the organization. So that goes by, like with an insider threat. Then there could also be an application security, which means, like there are n number of applications which are being used in any organization. Could start from enterprise resource application or a CRM application or any file sharing mechanisms. What all happens is, whenever the applications through applications, data are being exchanged freely, somebody can download it. Okay, somebody can share it without somebody's consent. So there is a threat for sharing of these confidential information even through an application security. So what you see on the right hand side, which is it's a comic figure, like where you say as a human error, because like you, however data security tool that you actually put in place, but there are still people, like who are having a malicious intent, who can compromise on the secrecy of the organization's data. Moving forward, just a statistics. Okay, what, when data breaches that has exposed, okay, since 2010, there have been almost 38 billion records that have been breached. Okay, and approximately there have been 40,650 hacks. And what are the various reasons that has been cited? Okay, so most of the IT leaders believe that it is actually their employees within the organization have put sensitive company data at risk, right? Okay, and most of the organizations feel that it is actually the insiders threats are more frequent. And most of the enterprises feel that they have suffered a major reputation or a brand damage, because they call it as, like because of the data leakage. And most, or at least 1 in 4 customers, okay, they have actually agreed that, like in one of the studies conducted by Ponemon, the breach has been there. So these are some of the statistics in terms of how the globally the breaches has been happening. So now talking about some of the various regulations and data security, what we need to understand is, okay, fine, we all understand that data breach is happening. How does the regulatory industries are tackling with this? Okay, what is there any guidelines, right? Yes, so there are state government regulations and there are vertical specific regulations. So for example, like you have got an account in a bank, right? Okay, so each of you. So now what happens is that, like all these banks are governed by regulator by name RBI. So RBI has a cyber security arm called Ribbit. So so what RBI advises all the banks is to follow a guideline which is called as cyber security guideline, which has been framed by RBI. So most of the banks have to adopt to the security guidelines which are framed by the RBI. So same way, like banks, there are insurance companies, IRDA has got a certain regulation. Same way, across the globe, there are different regulated industries, and each of them follow their own regulations in order to achieve data protection. So coming to what are the trends that we need to watch out for. So this is something, right? Picking up, at least in a country like India now, where data protection bill got introduced, in fact, even in the cabinet, and in all possibilities by end of December it should be passed. So what we are seeing is more states will introduce protection laws, and there will be a call for federal data privacy law, and privacy will become the point of discussion even across the board. And training and awareness around data protection will increase, and cyber security as an adoption will become a business differentiator, right? So these are some of the trends that we need to watch in the coming few years. So let's talk about a little more about the concerns, like what is data privacy and why it is important in the context of data protection. Data privacy means to it's a piece of information or data, okay, and how it needs to be handled, okay, and how relatively it is important. So I touched upon in the earlier slide about the sensitive information. So this is actually classified as or you can tell it as it is known as personal identifiable information, or it is called PII or a PHI, according to the industry. So say for example, like we have got social security number, or you've got a medical records number including the financial data, or it could be a credit card numbers. Okay, all of this comes under the sensitive information. So it is very important that these sensitive informations are guarded, and this is as per the data privacy, they need to be protected. So why data privacy? Why this is because transparency is very critical. Okay, companies which are dealing with PII information, they need to communicate what data they collect. I think, see, let me give an example. Say for example, most of you say probably like let me assume that like most of you own a vehicle, like maybe it could be a two-wheeler or a car, right? Okay, so while you have bought your two-wheeler or a car, you would have insured that vehicle as well, right? Okay, so most of you would have observed that at the during the end of that 1 year of insurance, you might get an unsolicited call, okay, from somebody representing, he is calling from X and Y insurance company. Okay, do you want to renew the insurance? We will give you some better rates. So maybe you have taken a different insurance plan. Now they are going to offer you some better plan. So you have to understand that, okay, first and foremost, how did that person get to know about your data, and how does he exactly know that your vehicle insurance is getting lapsed on so and so date, right? So this is a very, very critical information, right? So this is your personal data, it is about your vehicle, okay, and it is about your PII information. How in the market somebody, and who he could be some outsourced vendor, or somebody who's a partner, like or who's dealing with such kind of things, like how did he get to know about it? Or he could be an agent who's working for an insurance company. So how did he get to know about this? So these data, sometimes if not protected by the organizations, they tend to get leaked easily, and there is no track to these confidential data which are getting leaked, right? Okay, so this is what we call it as transparency is very critical, and privacy is right to be left alone. So individuals have rights to exercise their rights. So basically, like you have left something, like you're working on some confidential data and you have just left it on some machine, right? And it's easy that somebody gets access of it, okay, and the violation of customer rights can results in fine, right? So it is very important for the organizations to understand that any violation of customer rights will lead to some penalties. And we will get on to more details in terms of the non-compliance part and the privacy regulations which are worldwide, because now as laws are becoming stringent, there are going to be fines which are getting associated, and if any organization has been identified that or in case of non-compliance, they have to pay hefty fines to the boards. So this is some of the data privacy reasons why data privacy is important. We will move to regulations. Is something I have already touched upon, where there are different governments and regulatory industries which are adopting regulations. and they are time and again they are enhancing the frameworks in order to meet data protection initiatives. So let me give you a overall view of what analysts have got to do, what they have got to say around data privacy. By the year 2023, we find that at least 65% of the world's population will have all their PI, that is that personal information which I talked about, covered under the privacy regulations. Currently, it is just 10%, right? And it is very important for students like you to understand by 2022 more than 1 million organizations is going to be having a data privacy officer or a data protection officer. Today, if you see in most of the enterprises, you will typically have someone who is in the role of head of information security head, or he's chief information security officer, right? Okay, there are very few organizations who have actually started this concept of data protection officer, or they call it as data privacy officer. So in the coming years, in the next couple of years, we will find that more and more and more organization who will be having a chief data privacy officer, okay, who will be responsible to ensure that all the sensitive information in the organization are completely protected, and he remains the sole custodian of where he becomes accountable, and he was also responsible for ensuring that their organization achieves complete data protection. So this is on the analyst view. So going forward, okay, let's talk about what are the industry solutions that have got to offer, and what are the limitations of that also. See, we will find that when it comes to security, right? Okay, so there are a number of security tools and available, right? So it could be to do with firewalls, okay, or it could be to do with privileged access management, or MDM, or it could be identity management, biometric systems. There are a whole lot of systems which are available. But now when we need to understand what are the limitations of these solutions, and we talk about okay how data-centric technology will be able to help address the limitations that the current industry solutions have got. So what we are going to now talk in the further slides is how we are going to focus on the actual data, right? Okay, so now say for example you have got, so what you see in this particular slide is you have got a castle, and then you have, there is a the most important asset is your data, right? Okay, now what happens, this data can freely move within the enterprise, or it can be it can move out of the network as well, right? So but current security tools what are available are basically there are tools to safeguard the applications, there are tools to secure the network, there are tools to secure the perimeter and the devices, right? Okay, so now what happens is all these devices and all these securities are still available, but still why the breaches, data breaches are happening? Why? Because there is sometimes there is no control on the data that flows out of the network. There is no control on the data that leaves the corporate perimeter of any organization. So that is where a data-centric solution comes into play, and we will talk more about data-centric security and digital rights management in the subsequent slides. So we talked about the inherent challenges in the last slide. So there are these are point solutions, these are perimeter based solutions, and it cannot address the data if somebody is accessing it. So these are some of the points which we have already covered. I will just move to the use cases. Use cases, let me talk about it. So say for example if you are looking at protecting some very confidential information, right? So we have informations where, say for example you are sharing some confidential information to subcontractors, or you are sharing some confidential information to any component specifications you are sharing with some vendors, or you are dealing with some design information where these critical informations are shared. So we will need to understand what are those confidential informations, okay, that needs protection. Then I will also touch upon one of the very important aspect now every organization is doing. Say for example there is a concept of outsourcing in most of the enterprises, where while they outsource, they outsource sometimes all the non-core functionalities of an organization. See, it could be like the payroll functions, or it could be a procurement, or it could be a call center. So you will find, say for example, most of the time, probably like okay, let me take an example, like say for example, you have got, okay, your banking account, and you lost your debit card, okay, somewhere, and you want to log a complaint, and then like you, when you call to an a customer care, like you will actually find that this customer care organization is not part of the bank itself, like it's an outsourced entity, right? Okay, so when you have to log a complaint, so then you will realize that most of the organizations like this have outsourced their call center operations to such kind of entities. But what exactly happens is that, like while you talk to them, like they have access to some of the banking systems as well, so they will have certain access to some critical information of the bank's customer, right? Okay, so same way, there are different functions that organizations do outsource. It could be F&A, say for example, a lot of time there are F&A activities like pay, invoice processing and receivables being outsourced to some external firms that will have the company's vendor invoices and receivables getting processed. So you get to know the company's customer information. Same way, HR services, like it will have confidential informations, like the data, like the candidate's information, salary details. So most of these informations are outsourced. So we have different functions which are being getting outsourced. Now, what are the say, these are some of the examples like what I mentioned earlier: customer service, HR, sales and marketing, healthcare. What you see on the right hand side in red color is like these are all very critical data for an organization, right? Okay, so can they compromise on this confidential information? No. So it is very important that the data centric security technology should be there in order to protect these confidential information. So now I will touch upon one of the very important aspect, where this of collaboration. Like so collaboration, when we talk about today, collaboration has only increased, right? So what happened earlier, there used to be just one way of sharing information, but now there are multiple ways, okay, right? Where somebody can send an email, or somebody can simply take a copy of it, critical information through a floppy or disk, or somebody can share, do a message, go to a social media, and then like simply attach some confidential information. Then there are.
Sorry, Bala, sorry to interrupt. A few of the participants are requesting if you can hide that stop sharing block. It seems that some of the text is, not readable because of that.
Oh, I hope, is it fine?
I think it should be better now. You can hide it also. I think either way will work just fine. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you so much.
No issues. Thanks, Shika. So there are a number of collaboration tools which are available. So what happens is an employee within an organization, like he will share some of the critical information through any medium, right? There are different channels through which confidential information can be shared. Okay, but whenever such confidential informations are getting shared, are these informations really getting protected and shared? No. Somebody can copy a confidential information through a thumb drive, and then he can take it home. Okay, and then like he can use that information, or he can I would say that he could actually misuse that information, right? Okay, so using data centric security technologies, we can try and address most of these challenges which are associated with such collaboration tools. So now talking about these challenges which I just mentioned, right? Say for example, you are sharing confidential information which is actually unavoidable, right? Okay, so because you have some outsourced vendor, okay, or you have got some contractors, okay, whom you need to share some confidential information. So today what happens is that, like legally, like every organization will have an NDA signed between two parties, right? Okay, NDA is non-disclosure agreement, which essentially says that, okay, if at all there is any effect of data breach, then they would take a legal action. But what exactly happens is NDA is not written, which means you cannot actually trace whether the data leakage has only happened through this particular outsourced party or vendor, right? Okay, so it doesn't there is no technology that can prove like a data leakage has actually happened because of so and so. So what we are trying to say is that it is difficult to prove legally that data was stolen, right? So you obviously need to have a technology in place that will enforce complete end-to-end data protection rather than like depending solely on non-disclosure agreements, right? So now and then liability of security breach is not shared, and security embedded with in collaboration tools are not sufficient at all. Okay, and if it is also important to understand like who, what, when, and where, and these are some of the parameters that we need to understand in order to protect some sensitive data. Okay, how do we enforce such controls? So some of the present options, there are limitations which I just mentioned. Okay, there are some tools which are available currently, but they are not sufficient at all. Okay, so the challenges could be like data, does it access, does it expire with the NDA? No. Or say for example, like you have a contract in place, okay, or basically a bank, organization has a contract with the vendor, and all the terms and conditions are explicitly mentioned. But what happens is like is there a way where okay the contract copy also can get expired, okay, on the end date of the contract? It is not possible, right? So using data-centric security solution, we can make this possible. And a lot of people say that okay fine, we do have technologies like data encryption, but is it actually enough? No, the encryption is alone is not sufficient. Okay, we need to have a more robust data-centric security solutions that will help in full-fledged data protection. So having given a complete a background about okay need for a robust data protection and need for a data centric security, I will just about okay now what is data centric security and then digital rights management quickly. So what is data centric security? Okay, so as a process, right? Okay, you need to actually understand like data is everywhere, right? Okay, so it is important to first discover there is something called there is a sensitive data, and then you need to identify and label them, saying that okay this is a public data or this is a private data. Or say for example there is a circular that comes, is it's issued by an organization, that is actually a private public data. But if it is confidential information for only a certain group, that has to be identified as a critical or a sensitive data. Then third comes protection, which is very important. Okay, so any sensitive data that needs to be protected, that is using digital rights management. And then how this can be analyzed in terms of what are the activities that has been performed on those sensitive data. How do we go about finding it? And we have to go about analyzing it and getting some kind of reports on top of it. So there are what you see here is a data centric security as a platform, or what we call it as like this is more though sector specific, like I will just touch upon what is very important here. Okay, so now there are various enterprise systems which are present in the organization, and then it is very important to understand and secure those confidential information which are being exchanged between the employees of the organization and then exchanged with any external stakeholders, right? So it is very important to have a solution that would completely protect the organization's data. So that's where like Seclore, we do offer data centric security as a platform to our customers. Then let me now talk about the most critical part, okay, of this presentation. We are getting into understanding about okay how do we achieve data centric security, like then what is. So this can be achieved through various technologies, and one of the core technologies is called digital rights management. So digital rights management, one can persistently protect and track information wherever it travels, right? So what does digital rights management do, right? It is very important to understand the critical features of digital rights management. Give me a moment, I'm just having a glass of water. Yeah. So what should a rights management typically do? So say for example, digital rights management system should be able to define who can access a file. Say for example, this is my laptop, and I'm showing you guys a presentation. I want to basically define, okay, who all can view the file, or who all can a specific group, or to be, or is to be shared with only a specific individual. Okay, that as can be defined. So who can access the file, that is very important. Then what rights they have, say for example, let me take an example here. We have Shika here. So suppose I am going to share some file to Shika. Okay, so Shika should, I basically define and determine Shika will be only able to view or maybe edit that file, but she shouldn't be allowed to take a print, or she shouldn't be allowed to take a copy of that content. So I can also further go ahead and define that she cannot work using that file when she is offline, and she cannot take any screen grabs, right? And I can also further define when she can use that particular file, which means I can put a time bound restriction, which means I can say for example, today is Wednesday. I can put a date saying that, okay, only till Friday evening 5 p.m. Shika will be allowed to access that particular file. Beyond that, if she's trying to access that same file, though she has downloaded that file into her local machine, she wouldn't be able to have access of that particular file. And I can also further go ahead and put one more additional control, which is where part, where I can define that Shika will be able to access the particular file only on her laptop, but not on her mobile device. Okay, and I can block her mobile access. Or I can also, suppose she is working for COI/SEK, I can give an control in such a way that she can access that particular file, okay, with a specific IP range, and if that particular IP address range can be defined. Say for example, her office address, she's working on the same laptop, she's actually carrying back home, she will not be able to access the file, okay, when she's accessing from home, but she will be able to access only when she's in the office. Further, what I can also do is that I can bring in more granular controls, okay, and I can apply a lot of advanced permissions onto that particular file, okay, and it goes beyond classification, encryption, and DLP. I will touch upon these technologies towards the end of this presentation, right? First I will cover upon digital rights management, and then I will touch upon how digital rights management differs from a normal encryption tool, or a data classification, or a DLP. Then coming to permanence. So protection persists with the file forever. So what does it mean? You share a file, okay, to some few set of people, but once you understand that these files have been shared, okay, and does the protection move away after the file? No, the protection will be persistently achieved. So basically, we ensure that, say for example, if this file is shared through any medium, through email, or whether a file is shared through thumb drive, or whether a file is shared through some kind of an hard disk, so any which way, the file is completely rights protected. Then coming to the most important part, which is the audit trail. Okay, audit trail is what is very important to understand is can I track any activity that has been performed on a file which has been shared, and which is not even in my network. Say for example, now let's take the same example of Shika. So I have shared a file with Shika. she's not in say SECLORE'S network, I will still be able to find out Shika has opened the file at so and so time. I will still be able to find out Shika has taken a print of the document, or if there is any unauthorized attempt that she has tried doing. Say for example, she doesn't have authorization to take a copy of the content, right? Okay, so if she is trying to take that, and what we SECLORE can do is that, like through using our audit and dashboard, we'll be able to find out she has tried to make an attempt of it. System will restrict it first and foremost, but any attempt to, or basically any unauthorized attempt to copy the contents will also be tracked. The last one is the remote control. This is a very beautiful feature of any rights management tool that should be there. So, say for example, I am sharing some information or a file with somebody, and then I, for whatever reason, I want to revoke access. When I mean I want to revoke access, it may not be complete revoke of the file. I have probably given earlier permission to view and edit. Okay, now I want to revoke edit permission, but let the view be there. So we basically, like we can revoke a specific set of permission, right? Okay, and so that way, so SECLORE can control various parameters, like using SECLORE'S rights management, who can read a document, or like who can send a document to a third party. That can also be controlled, or like you can control access to any information which is inside the document, right? So what is also very important is, like so here, as I said, okay, SECLORE can control who can read a document, but can SECLORE control anybody from who can send a document to a third party? Say for example, I am sharing a file to Shika, okay, and then Shika can further share a file to someone, as long as she has got share permission, right? Okay. So so SECLORE can control who can actually view the document, or SECLORE can control who can access the information inside the document, right? And then, like can also to understand, like what are the various mediums. Yes, there are all through different channels and different mediums, like emails, USBs, DVDs, informations can be shared. And yes, SECLORE can restrict the flow of documents. Say for example, if there is a OneDrive, or if there is a USB drive, okay, and if there is an email address, okay, and SECLORE can restrict the flow of document? No. So SECLORE will not be able to restrict the flow of document. So here what we are trying to say is that so information can travel anywhere, but only the authorized person will be able to access the particular file, right? And out of the box, SECLORE will be able to you will be able to, can help in protecting a file, or any emails which are being exchanged. And I will moving forward, I will talk about various mechanisms or methods which are associated with protecting these files. Say for example, any file can be simply right clicked, okay, and then, like it can be rights protected, right? Okay, I will just take you through that snapshot about how it works. Just let me. Yeah. So say for example, okay, I have got a confidential document by name salesrevenue.docs, right? So now I can determine, and I can define who can have rights, who are the recipients who can have rights. Say for example, I can determine this person John can have edit and print rights, but Linda can have only edit right. And I can go to an advanced permission, and then I can define the expiry date. I can also further define location based control as well, right? Okay. And that I can restrict somebody from taking a print of a document, or I can restrict somebody from copying the content into the another files, etc., etc. So moving forward, this is another easiest way to protect a file. So today, most of the corporate customers are using Outlook as a medium of sharing information. So so any customers who are actually using a Microsoft, so we will be able to have a plugin called SECLORE'S. Okay, moment a SECLORE'S button is press, so immediately the permissions are appear. Immediately these permissions will appear, and then and there both the body of the email as well as the attachment of the email can be completely rights protected. So these are some of the features which as I already explained. Okay, so somebody can protect a file, like you can set an expiry, you can track, you can revoke. Okay, so these are this is called an email protection. So what I would also like to give a a brief is when we talked about earlier manual protection and an automated protection. It is easy for users to manually go right click a file and then protect it, but in today's busy business environment, like are the users protecting doing that way, and how easy or how difficult it is to track whether the users are performing their duty diligently. I will give an example. Say for example, most of us who are some of us who are working in enterprises, right? Say for example, I am just an employee of an organization, right? Okay, how critical or how important it is for me to protect my company's data, right? Okay, so it is just it is not important for me. Probably it is important for the organization to ensure that they protect their company's data, right? Okay, so that brings to a discussion where how do we ensure that automated protection can be achieved without user intervention. So what does it mean? Okay, yeah, somebody is creating a confidential data. Say for example, in this case, like we saw a sales revenue document, which was being prepared by an employee, right? Okay, so in the moment he's created that file and he closes that file, can we ensure that that particular file gets data protected? Yes, it is possible. So this is possible through something called a method called automated protection, where we can bring in a protection through a data classification. So we call this as classification driven protection. Same way, most of the organizations also do follow something called file server, where like most of the files are actually like stored in a network folders. Okay, and can we ensure that these files which are stored on a centralized file server can be rights protected? Yes, it is possible. And same, some of the organizations do have technologies like data leakage prevention. Can we ensure that any files which are scanned by DLP can be further data protected? Yes, it is possible. And and all of the organization by now will have some or the other email systems, right? Okay, how do we ensure that emails which are shared with either internal or external stakeholders, it's automatically rights protected? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible, right? Okay, so these are the ways through which protection can be achieved through a hot folder, through automated email protection, okay, and through a classification driven protection, okay, and then manual protection, right? Okay, so and what is actually required, what is is you all rights management requires is like only an email ID, okay, to ensure that the protection happens, right? Okay, say for example if the organization has got active directory, so a rights management tool will be able to tag along with or sync with the active directory tool in the organization, and then they will be able to it will be able to sync and then register. So which means say for example here this person is classifying it, say John Doe, and then Linda Jones. So these are all recipients, right? Okay, so we will be able to say for example organization has got an active directory. We will be able to rights management will be able to sync with the active directory and then fetch these recipients email ID and details, and then it becomes easier. So you need not manually keep typing the recipient's ID here. So it is very easy to define the granular usage policies further and then take it ahead. So we have almost covered the important aspects of the presentation. I will just talk about some more methods which are like an automated email protection, which I just mentioned about, where like say for example there can be rules which can be defined, where say for example whenever I am going to send a mail to say Shika or Karthik, okay, who are external to SECLORE'S domain, right? Okay, so I will be able to protect that email, both the email body as well as the attachment, and then give required permissions. So what happens is that I need not every time I need not go and protect that email as a end user. Automatically, moment it recognizes that okay, it is a domain which is external to SECLORE, so automatically an email, the mail which goes out gets simply rights protected. Same, this is about the hot folder which I discussed earlier, where once a file gets uploaded into a folder, it gets automatically rights protected. Yeah. So this is on the classification driven protection. So what is classification driven protection? I had mentioned earlier. So what is important for us to understand here is, say for example, every enterprise will have different set of data, right? Okay, say for example, some are internal data, some are confidential, some are business related. So while somebody is working on such in confidential data, all they need to do is that go and click this particular classification button called confidential. Moment they do that, there is a rights policies which gets automatically assigned, okay, where okay, only a limited users for 1 week will be able to view and edit. So this policy is automatically getting embedded into a file. So what happens is, all the user has to do is that moment before saving the file, all they need to do is that classify a file. Moment they classify a file, automatically the document gets rights protected with the attached user controls, what you see here, right? So this is on the data classification part. So same way for the DLP, which I explained earlier. So we have almost come towards the end of the presentation. Just in order to give one of the industry use cases, I chose banking. So let me just give an example on the banking industry. There could be various confidential information which are being exchanged or shared with either outsourced vendor or internally within the employees. Let me take an example of like some of the business operation within the banking. It could be lending, or it could be the corporate banking part, or the trade finance part, okay, or their risk and audit part. Okay, most of them are actually doing dealing with confidential information, and then they are mostly related with customer information, PA information, which are being shared. So different departments within the banking will require certainly tool like digital rights management in order to ensure that confidential data are completely protected. Same way this applies for different industries, be it a regulator driven industry, or be it, I would say, for example, a pharmaceutical companies, okay, or be it okay, insurance companies, okay, or be it governments, right? So everybody, each of these industries will require digital rights management in order to protect their data. So I've almost come to the end of the deck. Shika, you can do a time check. I hope we are well on time.
Yes, Bala, as a matter of fact, we are right on time. And we can now start taking questions. I have shared questions on the group also. So you can start taking from there. And for all the participants, you have any more questions, please share it on the chat window with us and we'll have them addressed.
Yeah, so I found a couple of questions. Are there data governance laws in India now? Yes, there are data governance laws, which are at a very broad level. If I need to discuss, like, say for example, there are laws which are like, say for example, GDPR, which is primarily pertaining to European Union. So say what happens is that these particular laws are already come into effect, right? Okay, so what typically happens is, okay, these particular laws are also getting defined. Such similar laws are getting defined in India as well. Okay, at a cabinet level, okay, Ministry of Information and Communication, okay, they have framed the laws, and then like we are very soon we will be expecting that they will come into effect, which means like the organizations have to bear penalties, okay, if at all there is any compromises to confidential information, right? Okay, so yes, and talking about the regulatory part, okay, so specifically to regulatory part, like we do have PCI DSS, okay, we do have IRDA regulation, RBI regulations, and all that which are specific to verticals. Then talking about cyber security certification for UG level and its benefits. So okay, fine. So coming towards cyber security certifications for undergraduation levels. Okay, I think this is something Shika. On the certification part, okay, there are a lot of industry bodies actually which are there, and then which help in getting the students getting certified on specific technologies. Okay, so be it related to data security or on the data centric security technologies. Yes, they are there. Okay, so there are different type of certificate courses which are available, and then which students can get certified themselves. So probably more details I think we can share, okay, after further discussions with the team. And how data governance is implemented or ensured when it comes to cloud security. Yeah, very good question. So what happens is that when it comes to cloud security, I specifically didn't touch upon that point. In fact, I thought it would become more technical. Okay, so I do have a different deck completely. So there are various solutions, okay, when it comes to cloud, right? Like say there are public cloud and there are private cloud where data is freely getting exchanged. But and there are systems like cloud access security broker, which is called CASB, which is available. That will help in securing data which is present in cloud. But a lot of times, okay, these security tools are also not sufficient enough, and because once the confidential data gets into the cloud, data needs to be completely rights protected. So that's where a data centric tool like digital rights management will help in securing the data even if it flows to the cloud. Okay, so next question, as discussed for Outlook, any work is going for MS Office also? Yes, yeah. So Outlook, yes, there are we have already have got a solution in place for O365. Okay, so when it comes to MS Office, okay, there are all these MS Office suite, right? Say for example, like they have got complete suite of products within O365, which could be like PowerPoint, Word, Excel. So say we support close to 60 different format of files. So yes, as a collaboration, anything to do with Office 365, SECLORE rights management will help in protecting the confidential files. Then coming to if organization has a DLP in place with all required rules and action, then does organization really need DRM? Yeah, so yeah, this is a very excellent question. So whoever has asked this, so it is very important. Yes, I will. I have to just take. I thought one slide which I will skip and later explain. I thought because it has come in the form of a query, I will just I have to take this slide. Let me just. Okay, let me just give an example, okay, of how DLP differs from say enterprise digital rights management. What a DLP does, so it's like say for example you go to a place where you find some actually a data leaking, right? So which means DLP will be able to stop the leakage, right? When we mean stop the leakage, what it exactly does, it will stop any file from leaving a perimeter, right? So, but what happens, like say for example, like as the example which I gave earlier, I am sharing a file with say Shika and Karthik. Does DLP have any role in ensuring and controlling this confidential information which has gone out of my network? She will DLP will be able to stop monitoring, or DLP will be able to protect that? No, DLP will not be able to do that, right? Okay. So it does not help in securing any external collaboration. So that's where when we talk about protection strength, protection strength will be very low. So it is very important to understand the use cases, and then depending on the business use cases, rights management can either complement a DLP, or either it can be a substitute for DLP depending on the use cases. So rights management certainly does go way beyond. So it's from a policy point of view, yes, it can protect, and then any files which are going beyond the perimeter, which DLP cannot suffice. So then coming to CISA or CEH. So from a certification point of view, yes, there are more and more courses which are coming up, and then I see CISA is getting more accepted. So typically, if you see a lot of industries, what if you this is just specifically for youngsters, okay, who are budding to be getting into an organization in the security role. Okay, so there are a lot of information security consultants, okay, who get hired in different organization, for their skill sets, right? Okay, so they do go through different certifications and courses, okay, and CISA is one of them. And then there are also various courses. Again, it depends on the industry as well. Say for example, banking industry will demand certain certifications and courses, and then maybe insurance will be slightly different. So depending on industry to industry, this will could vary. And coming to the next question, how can we give permission to access a new app which is created? How can we protect from unauthorized users? Okay, great. So okay, now what we need to understand is from a digital rights management point of view, what is the scope of this particular product, right? Okay, so we need to understand the scope, to what extent this can be achieved. Say for example, this is something like say for example, from an application level, right? Okay, so this is something to do with the application itself, so this will not come specifically under a digital rights management, right? So when we are giving, the question says we can give him permission or access to a new app which is created. So this is completely up to that security features of that particular application itself. So here what we need to understand is every application sometimes will have its own security features, okay, so that should not be confused with a digital rights management, right? Okay, so every application, every system in the organization will have its own permissions, access level securities, etc. So digital rights management is itself a security tool which will complement some of the existing security permissions which already in apps will have. Next question, is it better to have a separate company for handling cyber security instead of improving our own ways to do it? Okay, so it completely depends on the organization, I would say. So but I would say that an organization, depending on the size of the organization, they can either have a consultant, some of the organizations do have some security consultant, they are independent consultants, okay, but security being very important aspect for an organization, it is important to have that in-house, okay. So a lot of organization have SOC cell, or or they do have a information security team. So depending on it all depends on the size of the organization, I would say. Yeah, so these are the queries which I have got, Shika. I think I hope I was able to respond to most of them. Still, if there are any further queries, Shika, I think you can please take a note of it, and then we can circulate back. And are there any further queries?
Yeah, if there are any further queries, I request the participants to please share it on the chat window. We have a good amount of time with us. Though I think we have answered most queries that were shared, Bala, that were shared on the window.
Sure.
Any other queries? All right then, Bala, I don't think there are any other questions. So I think we can wrap the session now. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge for a very enriching session. I'm sure the participants would have gained a lot. And thank you for patiently answering all the questions that were asked. Thanks to the entire SECLORE team for partnering for this webinar.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Bala.
Thank you, Shika, and thank you, Karthik, for giving us this, opportunity. And I also thank all the participants, who have taken their valuable time to, attend this session. And I hope this has given them the fair idea about, data-centric security and, digital rights management as a whole. Thanks once again for setting this up, Shika.
Thank you so much, Bala and team. You may, Bala, the webinar, we would now proceed towards the assessment. So you may choose to drop off now as per your convenience.
Sure.
Now the assessment window will be open for all the participants.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Bala, once again.
All right. Okay. I'm dropping off. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay, for the participants now, I will be sharing the assessment link. As I have already shared earlier, that this link is only for those who have attended the entire webinar. Certificate of achievement will be given to those who secure minimum 5 or more than 5 marks out of 10.